At the beginning of the year 2017, the problems for a boy named Jeremiah Valencia really started. Official papers said he left Carlos Gilbert Elementary School because he was moving to a new school, but that wasn't true. There was a form showing he might transfer, but Jeremiah never showed up at any other school after that. No one noticed this. According to the rules in New Mexico, if a child is missing from school for 10 days without a good reason, the school has to do something. But the local school didn't check, and the state didn't track him either. This mistake was the chance for Jeremiah to disappear completely from the only place that might have looked out for him. While Jeremiah was dropping out of school, he was also trying to reach out in little ways. In January of that same year, he texted his mother, Tracy Peña, asking when she would come to get him and his sister from their great-aunt's house. This message shows she wasn't around, and that Jeremiah was relying on family members after his mom to have a place to stay. Then, in June, on the 11th day, he sent another message to a friend. In it, he said, "My mom just quit on me." He also admitted he was using marijuana to cope with how hard things were. These words reveal a boy trying to hold himself together, realizing he had been left alone. At the same time, there was a man in control of the house where Jeremiah lived, Thomas Ferguson. Ferguson wasn't new to trouble. In 2003, he was found guilty of hurting someone in his home, and in 2015, he was convicted of kidnapping. He was on probation for that kidnapping all during 2017. That probation was supposed to keep him under close watch, but it didn't. The year before, in 2016, Ferguson's girlfriend said he hurt her badly, but the court didn't take him off probation. During 2017, Ferguson missed several meetings with his probation officers, and again, no action was taken. Only on November 20th did the prosecutor ask the court to take his probation away. By then, it was too late. The timing is hard to accept because the system that should have controlled Ferguson only started to move when it was too late. This failure mattered a lot. Here was a man known for violence living with children, and the probation officers let him miss meetings again and again. Every time they ignored it, Jeremiah's safety became more at risk. As the months passed, the danger in the house grew worse. In July of 2017, Jeremiah sent a message to a friend saying he had gone to Clovis, Texas, to pick up his brother. This brother was Jordan Nunez, a 19-year-old and Ferguson's real son. Jordan had been out of the family's life before, but now he moved into the house. For Jeremiah, it meant another adult male who could be unpredictable in a home already full of violence. That summer was the last time people outside saw Jeremiah. His half-sister, Karen Gonzalez, and his godmother, Celine Mira, later told investigators they hadn't seen him since July. After that, for 6 whole months, Jeremiah vanished from their lives completely. His disappearance was not just physical, it was hidden with lies. From that summer on, his family told others he was away at a boys' ranch or staying with relatives in Mora. These stories were not made up after he died. They were already being used months before to stop anyone from asking where he really was. This shows the lies were planned. Someone wanted to hide him on purpose. One event stands out. A cousin of Ferguson remembered that Ferguson came to her house with Jeremiah. However, Jeremiah did not go inside. He stayed in the car, wearing a hoodie and keeping his head down. Ferguson told her Jeremiah was sick. At the time, it might have seemed odd, but not serious enough to do anything. Later, the cousin told investigators she felt something was very wrong. This image, Jeremiah sitting alone in the car, not allowed inside, shows how much control Ferguson had over him, even deciding where he could be. Court papers also add another bad detail. During that year, Jeremiah had injuries so serious he sometimes needed a cane or even a wheelchair to get around. This means the harm to Jeremiah was not only emotional, but physical. At 12 years old, he was already broken down enough that he had trouble moving. This fact is hard to forget because it shows how much he was suffering before the worst happened. By late November, everything was clear. Jeremiah's mother, Tracy Peña, was in jail for her drug use and probation violations and was no longer part of his life. That left Jeremiah alone in Ferguson's house, where Ferguson had full control and Jordan Nunez had moved back in. Family members had not seen Jeremiah in months. The school had removed him from their system. The probation officers had ignored Ferguson's mistakes. The lies about where Jeremiah was already existed. He had disappeared from every safety net, was no longer visible to anyone, and was left completely unprotected in the most dangerous place he could be. And because nobody was watching or checking on what was happening in the house, Thomas Ferguson's violence only got worse. This all reached a terrible breaking point on a Sunday near the end of November inside the house in Nambe. By that time, Jeremiah had nobody in the home to protect him. His mother, Tracy Peña, was in jail. Even though she hadn't really protected him before, at least she was another adult in the house, someone who could act as a buffer. Without her, there was nothing between Jeremiah and Ferguson's violence. On November 26th, Thomas Ferguson focused all his anger and attention on Jeremiah. The violence rose to a level that you could only call torture. Later, Jordan Nunez, Ferguson's biological son who lived in the house, confessed what happened that night. It all began in the living room. Ferguson started by hitting Jeremiah with his fists, but he didn't stop there. He pulled out brass knuckles and used those on Jeremiah. Then, Ferguson picked up a hammer, not a small one, but a heavy hammer that could cause serious injuries, and kept attacking him. And even after that, he grabbed a homemade spear from the house and used it too. During the entire assault, Ferguson also kicked Jeremiah with steel-toed boots. This wasn't a quick, angry outburst. It was a long, drawn-out attack where Ferguson switched weapons like it was planned or routine. Jeremiah was dragged through the house from one room to the next. They moved him from the living room to the kitchen, then through the bathroom, and finally into Ferguson's own bedroom. Throughout this horrible event, Jeremiah was still alive. He was beaten and dragged, going room to room with no chance to escape. The beating was so bad that Jeremiah's teeth were knocked out. Before this, he already had trouble walking because of old injuries, but after this beating, he couldn't walk at all. In the bedroom, Ferguson turned the radio on very loudly. This wasn't random noise. Jordan said Ferguson did this to cover up all the sounds, the screams, the hits, the chaos inside the house. Ferguson knew exactly how bad everything was, and he didn't want anybody outside to hear what was going on. This shows Ferguson wasn't out of control. He was aware of everything he was doing and trying to hide it as it happened. After the attack, Ferguson and Jordan forced Jeremiah's broken, bloodied body into a dog kennel in the bathroom. This kennel had been used before as punishment, but this time was different. Jeremiah was treated like an object, shoved inside the cage without care. Then Ferguson made Jordan help take Jeremiah out of the kennel and place him on a futon in one of the bedrooms. The reason for this move isn't completely explained, but it looks like Ferguson was getting ready for what he planned next. Some people guessed later online that maybe the kennel was too small or dirty to use anymore, so Ferguson moved Jeremiah's body to a bigger, cleaner space. That part is just speculation. What we know for sure is that Jeremiah was moved and laid out on the futon. Around this time, Ferguson pushed his control over Jordan even further. He picked up a sawed-off shotgun and pointed it at Jeremiah's head. Then he looked at Jordan and said clearly that if Jordan didn't take the blame for what was going to happen, Ferguson would kill him right there. This was no empty threat. Jordan believed Ferguson had the power to do it, and he had good reason to believe. The gun stayed with Ferguson as he made Jordan come with him on a trip to Family Dollar. This trip wasn't for food or normal things. Ferguson bought plastic sheeting, duct tape, and rubber gloves, nothing else. He knew exactly what he needed to cover up the crime. Jordan was forced to go with him, and the shotgun made sure Jordan didn't try to escape or stop anything. Back at the house, the next step began. They wrapped Jeremiah's body in the plastic sheeting and covered him with roll after roll of duct tape. Jordan said they used copious amounts. Their goal was to seal his body completely to keep it tightly covered. After that, they tried to put Jeremiah's body inside a large plastic storage container. It was tough to close. Ferguson had to climb on top of the lid and kneel on it just to get it shut. This shows how much they had to force it. Either Jeremiah's body had stiffened or the container was just too small. But Ferguson wasn't stopping until it was closed. Once the lid was finally down, they wrapped the whole container with even more duct tape. With Jeremiah's body sealed inside, Ferguson and Jordan carried the container into the garage. It stayed there for 2 or 3 days. During that time, Jeremiah's little sister was still in the house. She knew what had happened. She knew her brother's body was just a few steps away, hidden in that container in the garage. Ferguson had made it clear to her and to Jordan that if they told anyone, there would be consequences. That little girl, she was only 12 or 13 years old, was sitting inside that house with her brother's body not far from her, trapped by fear and silence. It's almost impossible to imagine, but that's what really happened. The next day, Tracy had been released after serving only a short stint on the probation violation. It wasn't long before she was back in the house on East Thomas Street. By that point, Jeremiah's body was already hidden in the garage, and Ferguson was ready to move to the next step, getting rid of it completely. A few days after the beating, Thomas Ferguson decided it was time to get rid of Jeremiah's body. He gave the order, and no one challenged him. Jordan Nunez and Tracy Peña were told to get into the car. They didn't have any choice in the matter. They took the plastic container holding Jeremiah's body, still tightly wrapped with many layers of duct tape, and carried it out of the garage. The lid had already been forced shut days before, with Ferguson kneeling on it to make it fit. Now it was just a heavy box they were about to drive far away into the desert. They drove east, away from Nambe, following the highway until they reached a remote and empty piece of land. This wasn't a quick, careless stop. Ferguson chose the spot carefully. When they got there, he told Tracy to stay put and watch without looking away. She wasn't allowed to leave or turn her back. Jordan helped with digging the ground. Ferguson held onto his shotgun, making sure both of them knew what would happen if they disobeyed. Together, Ferguson and Jordan dug a shallow grave big enough to hold the plastic container. When the hole was ready, they tipped the container upside down into the grave. Because of how heavy and shaped it was, this was awkward, but Ferguson didn't give up. He forced it inside and then covered it with dirt. He pressed down on the ground and flattened the mound until it looked finished. But Ferguson did not stop there. He wanted to mark the grave so that nobody could miss where it was. He dragged branches over the dirt, piling them on like camouflage, and then put a large animal skull right on top. This wasn't a small detail. It was strange and deliberate, like Ferguson wanted to send a message. Some people have said it looked almost like a ritual, like a trophy or a warning. Whatever his reason, that skull became part of the burial, sitting over that hidden grave. Throughout this whole thing, Tracy had to stand there and watch it all. Ferguson made sure she did. It wasn't just about hiding the body, it was about trapping her in the secret, making her a part of it so she couldn't deny what happened or separate herself from it. Some believe Ferguson wanted to break her completely. She wasn't silent just because she was scared. She had been forced to carry guilt too. After they finished with the grave, the three of them got back into the car. But Ferguson wasn't done controlling everything. Before they even got home, he made sure to set the official story. He told his 13-year-old stepdaughter exactly what to say if anyone asked. The line she had to repeat was simple. Jeremiah had gone to live with a relative in Mora. That was the story everyone in the house had to stick to. Once they returned, the lie started immediately. Family members began asking questions about where Jeremiah was and why no one saw him. Ferguson, Tracy, and Jordan all kept telling the same story. Sometimes they said Jeremiah was sick. Other times they said he was at a boys' ranch. These different answers kept people away and stopped them from asking more. Even children were part of the act. Jordan and Tracy's daughter went to Ferguson's cousin's house to feed the pit bulls. When asked about Jeremiah, she repeated the rehearsed line. He was away at a boys' ranch. The lie was no longer a secret. It was a performance they repeated again and again. For Jordan, following these orders was not a choice. Living under Ferguson's roof meant living with constant fear. He had already been forced at gunpoint to help wrap Jeremiah's body and carry it. Now he had to keep telling the lie. When family members or police asked him about Jeremiah, his answers always stayed the same. He didn't know Jeremiah was gone or Jeremiah was away. Every word he said was controlled by Ferguson. Jordan wasn't protecting Ferguson because he wanted to. He did it because the other option was unthinkable. Tracy Peña wasn't just quiet. She took an active role in keeping up the lie. She had been forced to watch the burial and never once called the police or reported Jeremiah missing. She repeated the story to friends and family, backing up Ferguson and helping hide the truth. She chose her side, and it wasn't with her son. It was with the man who killed him. That false story lasted almost 2 months. From the end of November until late January, no one outside the house knew what really happened. Jeremiah's body lay buried in the desert, while everyone was told he was sick, away, or living with family. The silence stayed because Ferguson made it clear what would happen if anyone broke it. A 13-year-old girl lived every day with the secret of her brother's murder hanging over her. She remembered Ferguson's threats and knew the grave was out in the desert. Looking back, it's clear how weak this whole cover-up was. It depended on many people keeping quiet. Ferguson controlled Jordan through violence. He crushed Tracy's spirit with guilt and fear. He threatened his stepdaughter, but so many people had to hold the lie that it couldn't last forever. In January of the year 2018, the silence about what happened finally cracked inside the Santa Fe County Adult Detention Facility. Tracy Peña was back in jail because she had broken the rules of her probation. For months before, she had been living under Thomas Ferguson's roof, controlled by his threats and trapped within a lie about Jeremiah. But jail was different. She was no longer in that house, no longer waking up every day with Ferguson watching her. In that new space, with the pressure of being locked up and alone, something inside Tracy gave way. She began to talk. At first, it was small. She didn't make a big confession right away. She said little things to other inmates, hints about a secret too heavy to hold inside. In jail, word moves fast. One inmate told the authorities that Tracy had said Jeremiah was dead. She said the boy had been killed and buried out in the desert. Not only that, she claimed to know where it happened and who did it. That was enough to catch the detectives' attention. They didn't have a body yet. They didn't even have solid proof Jeremiah was missing, just rumors. But this was different. The information was coming from inside Ferguson's circle, from Jeremiah's mother, who had lived in the house. The detectives could not ignore it. They worked quickly but carefully. They knew they couldn't just believe another inmate's word without proof. Since Tracy was in a controlled environment, they found an opening. They set up a three-way call, a call where someone Tracy trusted talked to her while investigators listened in. These calls only work if the person being questioned is already under pressure, and Tracy was. During the call, Tracy let her guard down. She confirmed what the inmate had said. Jeremiah was gone, buried in the desert. She didn't explain every detail, but it was clear she wasn't just repeating rumors. She spoke from real knowledge. She gave detectives the name they needed. She said it was Thomas Ferguson. That changed the whole direction of the case. Detectives already knew the family was complicated and that Ferguson was someone who controlled and scared the people around him. Hearing his name connected directly to Jeremiah's disappearance gave the investigation a clear target. Still, detectives had to be cautious. Ferguson was dangerous. Everyone living with him had learned to lie on command. The detectives needed to build their case carefully, step by step, or risk losing their chance to prove anything. One of the first things they did was look at Jeremiah's digital life. A boy his age always leaves a trail, on social media, in text messages, phone calls. With Jeremiah, that trail stopped in December of 2017. There were no posts, no calls, no messages after that. For a kid, such a complete silence doesn't happen without a reason. At the same time, they gathered the family's stories. The excuse about Jeremiah being at the boys' ranch came up again and again. That was the answer everyone gave when asked where Jeremiah was. Ferguson had made sure that Jordan and Tracy's daughter repeated it without hesitation. The detectives saw it was not a casual excuse, but a rehearsed story taught to everyone living in the house. Even outside of Tracy's confession, the detectives noticed cracks in the story. People close to the family saw strange things. Ferguson's cousin had asked questions about Jeremiah before. Ferguson always gave the same answer. Jeremiah was away or sick. The pattern repeated everywhere they looked. But just knowing the truth wasn't enough for detectives. They needed proof they could use in court. Tracy's jail phone call was crucial for that. It wasn't just her talking privately to another prisoner. In the call, her voice was recorded, confirming what she knew. That gave investigators something concrete to work with. From there, they focused more deeply on Ferguson. If Jeremiah was really dead, Ferguson was the one who made it happen. If Ferguson had done this, then he also controlled the lies that followed. All signs pointed back to him as the central figure. But even then, the body hadn't been found. Detectives had to move carefully, making sure they gathered every bit of information without alerting Ferguson too soon. Soon after Tracy Peña's words in jail on January 26, 2018, they brought her in for a formal questioning. They read her Miranda rights first. At the start, Tracy tried to keep calm and told a simple story. Jeremiah had run away a few weeks earlier. She said it was normal teen behavior and tried to make it sound no big deal. But detectives kept pressing her, asking why she never reported Jeremiah missing. That's when she admitted something showing her true priority. She had her own outstanding warrants and didn't want to risk going back to jail. For her, staying out of jail mattered more than finding Jeremiah. That first story didn't last long. Under pressure, Tracy changed what she said. She told them that when she got out of jail on November 26, 2017, she came home and found Jeremiah's lifeless body lying on a futon. He was wrapped in a blanket, his eyes open and his body stiff. It was a shocking detail, but she quickly shifted the blame. She said Thomas Ferguson moved the body silently. According to her, Ferguson put Jeremiah's body in a vehicle, drove away, and came back alone. They never talked about it after that. Jeremiah's death was like it was erased without a word. Then Tracy added something darker. On December 6th, Jeremiah's birthday, Ferguson took her out east of their home to show her where he had buried him. Tracy made it clear she was just a passive witness. She said she didn't touch the body, didn't help cover it, and didn't even know the location until Ferguson showed her. She painted herself as a mother who was horrified but powerless. After this, detectives focused on Ferguson. His interview was very different. Right from the start, he was defensive. He snapped at questions and refused to take responsibility. He denied knowing anything about a burial. Instead, he tried to put all the blame on his son, Jordan Nunez. "Jordan did this," he told investigators. "He's the one who's lying." Ferguson claimed that when Jeremiah was dying, he was asleep in his room. He said all he heard were noises and that he told them to stop. He made himself sound like an uninvolved bystander. Investigators noticed how cold Ferguson was. There was no sign he cared or felt sorry. His answers were almost clinical, like he was talking about something far away. At one point, when asked about looking for Jeremiah's body, he shrugged and said, "I didn't really want to find them, dude." That kind of reply made people feel sick. It showed he was not only lying, but also indifferent. That night, detectives decided to test Ferguson's story. They took him out to the rural area he described. If he wanted to blame others, he needed to give good details. But once there, he became slippery. He couldn't give a clear location. He gave confusing directions, pointed to vague landmarks, and mentioned something bluish-white that could have been anything, a piece of trash, a bone, or even a dropped cooler. Investigators thought he was wasting their time. Ferguson kept using they and her when talking about who was responsible, trying to throw Jordan and Tracy under the bus while keeping himself safe. The search ended without results, and the detectives gave up for the night. The next morning, January 27th, detectives changed their plan. They brought Tracy to the same area. Unlike Ferguson, she didn't hesitate. She guided them step by step to the exact spot. There it was, the grave, covered with a pile of branches, and on top, a large animal skull sat like a strange marker. The detectives brought in cadaver dogs, and the dogs immediately reacted. This confirmed Jeremiah's body was buried there. Tracy broke down at the site, crying heavily, showing what looked like deep pain, but investigators watching wondered, was it real grief or a show? Some legal experts later thought Tracy's cooperation was careful and planned. By leading them to the grave, she might have been trying to appear helpful and avoid looking like a suspect. Whatever her reason, her actions gave investigators the breakthrough they needed. At the same time, other detectives searched the family's rented home in Nambe. The photos showed how bad the living conditions were, but one item stood out most, a dog kennel in the bathroom, not hidden away in a garage or shed, but sitting where someone normally goes for privacy. That single image said a lot. It showed Jeremiah's life in the house wasn't just hard, it was humiliating. Investigators suspected the kennel was used to lock him up. One officer noted that Jeremiah's younger sister told them, "A little girl said that he would lock the little boy in the kennel." That simple sentence shattered the family's story. Jeremiah hadn't run away. He had been trapped, abused, and hidden in plain sight. Then, on January 30th, detectives took their search further. They looked in a storage unit connected to Ferguson. Inside, they found two key items that showed what Jeremiah suffered: a wheelchair and a hammer. The wheelchair silently showed how badly injured Jeremiah was. He wasn't a healthy kid who left home. He needed help just to move. The hammer was another sign of the violence in the house. With these items, the investigators now had physical proof to back up what suspects and witnesses had said. When you put Tracy's and Ferguson's interviews side by side, the difference was clear. Ferguson was cold, uncooperative, and evasive. Tracy was tearful, emotional, and cooperative, or at least she wanted to seem that way. Detectives couldn't ignore the chance that her emotions might be a performance, but her cooperation gave them the body. Ferguson gave them only deflections. By the end of those 2 days, detectives had the burial site, the kennel, the wheelchair, and the hammer. They had pieces of the broken family stories, and now they had evidence to start unraveling everything. The next step was clear. They had to speak again with Jeremiah's younger sister. Her first interview had repeated the family's lies. But with the truth coming out and evidence on their side, investigators knew she was the last person who could tell them what really happened inside the house. On January 27th, detectives sat down again with Jeremiah's 12-year-old sister. This time, they didn't accept half answers. What she said was worse than anyone expected. She described life in that house as hell on earth for Jeremiah. Those were her words, not the detectives'. She explained how Thomas Ferguson ruled over everyone, making Jeremiah his target, and how the punishments never stopped. She said Ferguson beat Jeremiah so badly and so often that Jeremiah could no longer walk on his own. Sometimes he used a cane, sometimes he was pushed in a wheelchair, and sometimes he didn't move at all. When Ferguson wanted to punish Jeremiah further, he didn't just yell or slap him. He locked Jeremiah inside a dog kennel like an animal. This wasn't a one-time punishment. It happened over and over, like normal life in the house. She described seeing Jeremiah shoved into the kennel again and again, as if that was how things were. Her mother, Tracy Peña, was part of it too, but in a quieter way. The girl said Tracy would sneak food or water to Jeremiah when Ferguson wasn't watching. That sounds like care, but it wasn't enough. Tracy never stopped the abuse. She never pulled Jeremiah out of the kennel. She never told anyone. She let it happen. Then the girl told detectives about the last beating. She said it happened around November 26, 2017, when Tracy was in jail. That night, the violence came from Ferguson and Jordan Nunez, Ferguson's son. They hurt Jeremiah so badly he was left bleeding. Afterward, they shoved him back into the kennel. The girl believed that's where Jeremiah died, inside the cage, hurt, trapped, with no one helping him. The story didn't stop there. A few days later, Tracy came home from jail. The girl said she saw Ferguson, Jordan, and Tracy move Jeremiah's body from the kennel to a bedroom. They laid him out on a futon. The girl was clear. Her brother was dead. Then the 3 adults carried him away to bury him. She stayed behind in the house while they went to dig the grave. Before they left, Ferguson looked her in the eye and told her exactly what to say if anyone asked. Jeremiah had gone to Mora. That was the lie she repeated until now. What she said wasn't just words in the air. Detectives already had proof from the house. The dog kennel was still there. The wheelchair was there. Ferguson's storage unit held a heavy hammer. All these matched what the girl had said. At the same time, another crack appeared. Jordan Nunez was watching the investigation close in on him. Ferguson had started blaming him for Jeremiah's death, and Jordan was tired of taking responsibility for everything. So he made a choice. He talked to detectives and told his side. His story matched his little sister's almost exactly. Jordan didn't hold back. He said Ferguson didn't hurt Jeremiah out of sudden anger. Ferguson enjoyed it. He liked hurting people who couldn't fight back. This wasn't just losing temper, it was cruelty. Jordan described the weapons Ferguson used in the last beating: brass knuckles, a 5-pound hammer, a homemade spear, and steel-toed boots. He said he saw his father drag Jeremiah's body through the house, shove him into the kennel, and leave him there bleeding. Jordan admitted he was forced to help. He said they went to Family Dollar to buy things like plastic and duct tape, and Ferguson kept waving a sawed-off shotgun to keep him quiet. Even Tracy wasn't spared. Jordan said Ferguson made her stand and watch while they dug Jeremiah's grave in the desert. She didn't stop them. She didn't run away. She just stood there. The picture from both the girls' and Jordan's stories was brutal. Ferguson was the one causing the most violence, but no one else was innocent. Tracy lived in that house, watched what happened, and did nothing except small acts that didn't stop the abuse. Jordan joined in the violence and helped hide it. The 12-year-old sister was stuck in the middle, forced to lie to everyone. There was more from inside jail, too. Another inmate said Tracy's tears at the gravesite weren't real. Privately, Tracy showed no real grief or regret. Her show of sadness was just an act to manipulate the situation. This claim fit with the idea that Tracy was complicit, but trying to protect herself. On January 29, 2018, They performed an autopsy on Jeremiah Valencia. The results were grim and thorough. Jeremiah had died from blunt force trauma, but the report showed much more than just one violent event. The autopsy found many injuries showing a long history of abuse. His jaw had several fractures, his left hand had a recent break, and 3 of his ribs were healing from older injuries. The report left no doubt this was systematic, ongoing torture. Toxicology results added to the tragedy. Jeremiah's body contained methamphetamine and alcohol. Since he did drugs himself, it's unclear if his abusers gave these to him or if he used them to try to numb his pain. But the chemicals showed how twisted his daily life had been. Less than a month later, on February 16, 2018, the legal process began. A grand jury in Santa Fe County formally charged Thomas Ferguson with 18 felonies. These included first-degree murder and several counts of child abuse. Ferguson became the main person held responsible. Jordan Nunez also faced charges, including child abuse causing death and 2 counts of tampering with evidence. While the legal process moved forward, Ferguson's life ended suddenly and shockingly. On the night of April 27, 2018, he was found dead in his jail cell at the Santa Fe County Detention Center. He had hanged himself using a bedsheet tied between a metal bar and a window. Next to him lay a suicide note. In the note, he claimed he was innocent and chillingly expressed love for Tracy Peña. Even in death, Ferguson sided with his accomplice, the woman who helped hide the abuse, rather than the child he tortured. His suicide meant he never faced a trial, so the full truth of his crimes came only from testimonies, confessions, and evidence. After Ferguson's death, prosecutors focused on Tracy Peña and Jordan Nunez. In November 2018, Peña agreed to a plea deal. She pleaded guilty to 1 count of child abuse causing death. She agreed to serve 12 years in prison and promised to testify against Jordan. This deal was a strategic move to help hold others accountable. Facing the pressure of evidence and testimony, Jordan pleaded guilty in March 2020. He admitted to child abuse causing death and 2 counts of tampering with evidence. His plea meant Peña did not have to testify against him. Some experts guessed, though it wasn't confirmed, that Jordan's plea was influenced by the global COVID-19 pandemic and the uncertain court situation. The plea let him keep some control over an unpredictable process. Sentencing happened at different times. Peña received a 12-year prison sentence on July 27, 2020, at 38 years old. During her hearing, Jeremiah's godmother, Celine Miera, gave a strong victim impact statement. She reminded everyone firmly, the only victims in this case were Jeremiah and his sister. Her words cut through the legal discussions to focus on the real loss, the children's suffering. Jordan's sentencing came later on October 15, 2021. He received a 21-year prison sentence. The judge emphasized Jordan's moral and legal responsibility, pointing out that even though he wasn't the main abuser, his failure to stop the abuse and his help in covering it up made him deeply guilty. Both are firmly inside the New Mexico Corrections Department, paying the state's price for their roles in what happened in that Nambe house. Their release dates, calculated with normal deductions and no special credits, are set. Peña expected to be free around 2032 and Jordan around 2042. Jeremiah's younger sister was no longer part of courtroom proceedings or public stories, with her life mostly protected from attention. What is publicly known is limited. In 2021, a lawsuit was filed for her against Santa Fe County, alleging failures in the system that contributed to Jeremiah's death. The lawsuit pointed to school attendance systems that didn't flag his prolonged absence, welfare checks that never happened, and a mix of bureaucracy and human error that let a child suffer without intervention. This suit was settled for $25,000. That money could never make up for the months of suffering or the final deadly beating, but it was the only acknowledgement the system would offer for its shameful failure of protecting a child.